Greetings. And to begin the message, we always think about right things to happen in our lives, of course, right? Good morning. We always think about right things to happen in our lives, right? So, are you thinking about that? Thinking like that? Right things to happen in our lives? And we also expect right things to be done by God in our lives, right? There's no yes, no, anything. We also expect right things to be done by God in our lives. So, right things are perfect things. So, we always expect God to do perfect and right things in our lives. So, we pray to God, Lord, do this particular thing very perfectly in my life. Lord, do this thing very perfectly, very beautifully, very rightly in this particular time. So, Lord, I need this, I need that in a perfect way. So, I don't want anything imperfect in my life. I want everything perfect in my life. So, Lord, please give me, or please allow me, or please release the good things and the right things in my life. So, we humans always seek God for right and perfect things to happen. So, whenever we look at a person praying, so he expects from God the perfect thing. So, every perfect gift is from above. So, all these verses people used to pray, they used to tell God that, Lord, you are God of perfection, you are a righteous God, you do this perfectly, you do that rightly in my life. So, no one will ever pray for an evil thing to happen in their lives, right? So, no person will call upon the Lord and tell, Lord, do this evil thing in my life. No. So, always we are focused only on the right things and not on the evil things. So, we also choose right things most of the times in our personal lives too. So, we choose a lot of right things. So, we don't purposely choose an evil thing. But there are times when we choose, but to the overall, we choose right things in our lives. So, we choose right food, right? We choose which food is suitable for our stomach, for our health. So whether we choose it or not, it is different. But when we look at some food on the table or on the hotel, we tend to eat that and we are tempted to eat that. So that's different. But deep within ourselves, we always think of choosing right food, right? Right food, a tasty food, a perfect food for that time. So what snacks or what food do you prefer to have in the rainy season? Hot and spicy food, tea and bhaji, bonda, vada, anything. So spicy like foods that we prefer in that season. So what food do we prefer in the summertime? Mild spicy things and like curd rice, things which cools our body, like that, right? This is practical. So we choose even a food very rightly, very perfectly, suitable for health as well as suitable for the body, suitable for the environment, everything. So, in our daily life, we choose right things. For example, let's take picking up a birthday dress. So, assume that you have a birthday this month or this week or tomorrow, and you are calling your dad and mom, your sibling, and you're going to a mall or you're going to a shopping. So you pick up a dress there, your birthday dress. So the stores are filled with new collections and everything. So you as soon as enter the mall or the dress store, you don't pick a wrong dress, right? An imperfect dress, an unsuitable dress. So as soon as you go there, you look around and you watch what all the collections have come, and you ask the shopkeeper or the person who is in charge of that to take this and that and everything. So after like 1 hour of picking up, choosing, putting that here and there, picking the designs, colors and size. So we do a lot of research work there in the shop, right? So we will never ever pick a wrong dress purposefully. We will never choose an unsuitable dress or an imperfect dress for our birthday. So another example to look at is buying a shoe, a sports shoe or any casual shoe, a shoe for any event, anything. So as soon as you enter a shoe store, what would you do? The shopkeeper asks you what you want from our shop, and we tell, I want a shoe, sports shoe, anything. So he what immediately does, he makes us sit down in a chair, and he used to take the meter and ask us what size do you want. If we don't have any answer, he himself will measure our feet, and he used to bring the perfect match, the perfect shoe for our feet, for legs. So we choose the right one, right? So let's take, if your feet size is 8, so will you prefer to get size 6 shoe or a slipper, or size 10, so that within few years I will grow, so it will be helpful? So instead of getting the perfect size, will you get a larger size than yours? No. We go to a dress shop and we get a suitable dress for us, a right dress for us, perfect dress for us. We go to a shoe store and we pick up a perfect and a right pair of shoes or slippers for our feet. So whether food or dress or anything, we expect right things. Another example to look at is that building a house. So just quickly answer me, what will be the necessary things while building a home, building a house or home, anything? Land is required. After getting the land and everything is ready, what are the materials that are required to build a home? Sand, bricks and windows, marbles, tiles, plumbing lines, electricity line, and the cement and the workers, of course. So while building a home, this windows, this gate, bricks and sand, the interiors and the painting even. So we don't simply tell the engineer or the person in charge of the building, just paint anything that you wish, I don't care about that. Will any owner tell that? Or else do any interior, I don't care, you just do whatever you feel like. No, we don't do like that. So whatever seems best to you, you just do. These things won't be said by an owner to the engineer. So we do it perfectly. The owner needs it very perfectly, so that he chooses the color of the tiles, the marbles, the paintings, the everything, the outer painting, the inner painting, the interiors and every work. So a person, a owner of a house, when he builds a house, he's very particular, he looks very perfect, and for a perfect things he waits for many days and builds a new home. So each and everything in life, we think of having a perfect one, the right one. So not that only adults expect right things to happen in their lives. No. Not that only adults expect right things, but little children, they also expect right things more than the adults. So too much expectations and very much keen on a particular object or a thing, a place. So little children nowadays, they expect a lot more perfection than the adults. So they expect a lot of right and perfect things to happen in their lives, whether it may be gift or any surprise, anything. It must be a perfectly aligned or perfectly given gift or something. So everything is fine, but in our spiritual life, in our spiritual journey, we also expect right things to happen. So I've told this before. So we always expect God to do right things in our lives. So if God is not doing anything in our life, we pray, Lord, why you are not doing anything in my life? So what happened? So I'm praying, I'm listening to your word, I'm reading the Bible. And why, Lord, you're not doing anything in my life? So both in our spiritual life and in a personal life, we wait or expect for the right things to happen. Both life, personal life and spiritual life, we expect good and perfect thing from God. So just think of this. We expecting God to do right things in our life, that is fine. It is good to expect. It is okay to expect good things and perfect and right things from God. But are we doing right things before God in the eyes of the Lord? Keep this question run through your mind. We expecting God to do right things in our lives. It's our wish to ask this, Lord, do right things, perfect things in my life. But in return, are we doing right things to God, before God? Take this question seriously, and we always want God to do right things. Whether we pray well or we read the Bible, that is different. But always we expect God to do only right things, perfect things in our lives. But when God expects the same thing from us, what do we tell Him? We expect this to happen, Lord, do this in the right way. And in return, if God asks us, okay, I will do perfect and right things in your life. So, are you doing perfect and right things? So, many Christians, they only expect right things from God, but they fail to do right things before God. So, God created mankind. Also see in the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve. So, God created them from the dust of the ground. So, everything He commanded and it happened, right? The creation story, the creation part of the Bible, it tells that God said, let there be light, and there was light. So let there be animals, and everything that God created, He commanded and it appeared. It came to reality. So from His words came all the things. But one interesting thing is that while He created man, He did not command, but He came and He created him from the dust, like a potter creating a clay pot. So how He designs, right? So perfectly He designs and aligns mankind. So He created Adam and Eve, the first human. He gave them the free will. Free will is nothing but to choose or to decide things on their own. What is suitable, what is not suitable. So also God instructed them to choose the right things which pleases God. And also God helped all mankind to choose right things in their lives. Because one negative shade of the free will is that when it is being given to any man, any person, any woman, it can either be used for the good purpose or for a bad purpose. It depends upon the individual choice made by a person. So, God gives the free will so that man can freely choose Him. If the free will is not been given to any person, it will be a command. We will be a robots in God's eyes. He functions like kind of robot. So, He gave the free will just because to make us choose or decide things on our own. Helps our mind to think. So, He not just made human, He not just instructed. So, through laws, through prophets, through words, through judges, God helped mankind to do what is right in His eyes. So look here very closely. God not just created man, but also He helps mankind to walk in righteousness, in right paths. So God does multi-roles here. One is giving law and also helping him, the man, to walk in the right way. So from the Bible we see a beautiful event which talks about this. So I call it beautiful because this incident is really a beautiful one. So before that, just a question to put forward. What will you do when you look at a small baby? Very simple, straightforward question. Very simple question. What will you do when you look a small baby or a small kid around you? What will you do? Yeah, we will take that baby or that little kid in our hands and we used to play. Then what else? We start to pinch them. If the baby or the little fellow is cute or chubby, we will pinch his cheeks, and also we will have fun with them. We will play around with them. So today, the event from the Bible talks about a young little kid who had done a great thing in the sight of God. So let us turn our Bibles to 2 Kings chapter 22 verse 1. 2 Kings chapter 22 verse 1. I will read it for you. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. His mother's name was Jedidah, daughter of Adiah. She was from Bozkath. This is the verse to start the message. So here is the young little kid whom I was talking about. So Josiah was this kid. Josiah was his name, the little boy's name. He was little fellow, small in age. So what's his age? That passage in that verse. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king. 8-year-old little kid is being mentioned in this place, in this verse. This 8-year-old little kid, he became king. Wonderful, right? At a very young age, at the earliest stage of his life, at the age of 8, not 80, 8, he became a king. So, how he became king at that age is that his father, Ammon, king of Judah, he died so that there was no one to take that throne. So Josiah, his Ammon's son, he reigned in the place of his father. So, and this Josiah reigned in Jerusalem. Interesting. There are many places in the Bible. This little fellow, 8-year-old fellow, this little Josiah, he reigned in Jerusalem. So, a great place. Jerusalem is always a great place. Even today, people used to go as a pilgrimage to that place called the Holy Land, holy place. So, people have so much reverence to that place and seek that place as something very much greater. So, and this Josiah reigned in Jerusalem for 31 years. A long time, right? Quite a long time. 31 years, this 8-year-old little fellow, he began to reign in Jerusalem as king. And the verse continues that his mother's name was Jedidah, daughter of Adiah, and she was from Bozkath. This Josiah's mother's name was Jedidah. About Josiah's father, I will come to that little later, because I have little much to tell about his father too. So the important verse to look today, and today in verse 2, we see that he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and followed completely the ways of his father David, not turning aside to the right or to the left. So this is a very interesting one, because the first line it says that he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. So amazing one. This little Josiah, this 8-year-old little boy, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. So surprising to look at this verse, these lines. So he did right things in God's eye. This Josiah not just did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but also he followed completely the ways of his father David. So in the Hebrew tradition, in the Old Testament tradition, we see he followed completely the ways of his father David. Just before I told that Ammon was the father of Josiah, this little fellow, and Ammon, the father of Josiah, died so that Josiah became the king of Judah. Here the verse tells that he completely followed the ways of his father David, which means that David was his forefather. In his line, this person came. So, father here means that ancestor. He followed his ancestor's line, David's line. So he followed God's way through David's life. He followed his forefather David's ways of approaching God, to give reverence to God. As David followed God's way, so we all know about David, right? We all know about David, how he was passionate towards God's work, towards God, and he was very much focused on his God. That's why we have 150 Psalms, and much Psalms were written by David, and in many places like 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings and 2 Kings, we all can see the name of David here and there. In the book of Samuel, we can very well see David's name. But after David's death, his name also continued. So we see here how David followed God and how he followed God's laws. So there are many laws that Moses gave, the man of God gave, and David followed them in his personal life. He followed God's words. So as David followed his God completely, this Josiah, from the ruling line of David, the king, he too followed the ways of David to seek God and his ways. Not just that, he not turning aside to the right or to the left. This is where a good picture of Josiah comes here. So he did not turn aside to the right or to the left. So even more beautiful to look at this part is that Josiah walked not in a different way, not in the ways of the other people, not in the ways of the other friends around him. Though he was a little fellow, a very 8-year-old little kid, he walked in God's ways, and not just walking, not even turning aside to the right or to the left. So he walked at the center of God's word. This is an unusual one in Israel's and Judah's history. Because when we look at the background of this, we can see that right from 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, 1 Kings and 2 Kings, we see a lot of kings ruled the people of God. The first king of Israel was Saul, and after that David reigned, and after that so many kings were ruling the people of God, the Israelites. And of course at the time of Solomon, after the time of Solomon, the kingdom got divided into two. The one part which was called Israel, another part which was called Judah. And in both the places, a lot of kings ruled. So Judah and Israel, they both had kings, and out of hundreds of kings, for an example, just take, out of 100, just few, very handful of kings walked in God's ways. Very, very much little, like out of 100, let's take some 4 to 5 people walked completely in the God's ways. Very few. So rest of the kings were evil and they walked in other ways. So when we read these books, Kings and Samuel, we can very well see and identify who walked in which way. So these rest of the kings who ruled in Judah and as well as in Israel, they did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So how the other kings did evil in the sight of the Lord is that, what they did is that they introduced idols in Israel. They sacrificed to the other gods. They sacrificed, they slaughtered their sons and daughters like cows and sheep and oxen. They used to sacrifice their own sons and daughters for other gods. They followed mediums, witchcraft, and all the other things that God of Israel was against. So God of Israel very well told all these laws and commandments regarding the other practices that were going on. So through Moses and the other people, God was always instructing them. You should not walk according to what the other people do. Do not follow the practices of the other people. See, they are following in different way. They are sacrificing their own children, their own sons and daughters for other gods, so that their prayers will be honored or accepted. So spiritually, these people, and also personally, these people were cruel. They were infected people with sins. So God very well told all these people, the Israelites, through many prophets and priests, telling that stay away from idol, stay away from sacrificing to the other gods. So stop sacrificing your sons and daughters. So be aware of the mediums and witchcraft. You should never follow the patterns of the other nations. You have to be unique. You must destroy them. So, but these people, after the years went by, they went after all these other people who were around them and also adopted their practices and beliefs and their way of slaughtering their sons and daughters, sacrifices, they met the idol worship and everything. These people of God went away, and the root cause of the backsliding part of the Israelites, the people of God, is that one of the greatest and the important reasons were the kings who ruled them. Because a common person who does a thing, it won't be famous throughout the land, but a king of a nation, when he commits a sin against the law of God, the sight of God, so when a popular person does any mistake, his mistake will also get popular. So in that way, a king of a country, a king of a nation, they themselves introduced all these idol worship, sacrifices, witchcraft and everything. So not just introducing, they also followed. They also built high places and similar kind of structure like God given to Moses, the temple of meeting and everything. These people changed the structures and made there to the other gods and sacrificed at the high places under every green tree. So, see, look at the cruelty and the evilness of the kings who led the people of God astray. So, about Josiah's father, to look at, in verse 19 of chapter 21 we see Ammon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 2 years. The father of Josiah, when we look about him, the verse 20, it says that he did evil in the sight of the Lord as his father Manasseh had done. He followed completely the ways of his father, worshipping the idols his father had worshipped and bowing down to them. He forsook the Lord and the Lord, the God of his ancestors, and did not walk in the obedience to him. So see how cruel was this person, Ammon, the father of Josiah. So he too was a king of Judah. He reigned in Jerusalem. So Josiah's father was also a king, a famous person, but he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He worshipped the idols, bowed down to them. He increased God's anger and wrath. So look at the difference between these two people. See, Josiah walked differently and his father walked differently. So here we can find an interesting thing. A family which is affected by sin, in a family, a father of that family, he committed sin against God. But look at the way of his son. It's quite two roads diverging. Here we see that the difference can be made very well with Josiah and his father. His father walked in a different way, but this little fellow, he walked in God's way. So I believe that maybe some supporters or some influence must be there to this Josiah about the living God, Yahweh. So in the life of Josiah, we can find three things to learn from Josiah's life. Number one is that the verse 2, it clearly tells that he did what was right in God's eye. He did what was right. Number 2 is that he followed God's way. Number 3, he never turned from God. He followed, he never turned. Three important things to look at today is that when we take the life of Josiah, as I was thinking about this sermon, so at this place we are all young and we also see kids, grown-up kids, not little ones. This sermon will definitely be a useful one in our lives. Though you may not understand the complete message, but just keep these 3 points in your mind and just meditate on this. While comparing Josiah's life and our lives, are we walking or are we doing what is right in God's eyes? When time comes or when some influence from the outside comes, we change strategy, plans. We do what is not right in God's eyes. So many of the time we fail to do what is right in God's eye. So doing right is fine. Everyone does, whether follower of Christ or anyone can do right thing. But right thing in the eyes of the Lord, that's important. It may be good for a person in his own eyes to do certain things or several things, and he can look at that as a right thing, but does that right thing according to him, is it the right thing in the eyes of the Lord? That we need to look at. Josiah, little fellow, he did what was right. So there were someone, maybe I believe that his mother could be one of the reasons, one of the influences of Josiah to do or to make him do what is right in the eyes of the Lord. The second one, he followed God's way. Doing right thing in God's eyes is different. It's a one-time event, doing right thing. And while he kept on doing the right thing, he also followed God's way. So keeping on the laws and commandments, practicing on the things that were taught to him, he followed God's ways. One of the role models he took was his ancestor David. So he followed all the ways of God, the God of Israel. Third one is he never turned from God. So that's very beautiful. Doing things good, following God's way good, but not turning from left or the right side. We also can find many kings in the Bible. They did what was good in the sight of the Lord, but the verse tells like that. But the high places and the other sacrifices were not destroyed completely. He was good, but not like this person. So we can find many verses like that. So doing things for God is fine, following God's ways are fine, but without turning to the right or to the left, which means not getting distracted with the things, with the customs, with the patterns of the world, not being influenced by other people, by other cultures that are abominable to God. He never turned to all these things, to the worldly things, but his focus and his walk was towards his God. So, three things to take from Josiah's life is that doing right things in the eyes of the Lord. I encourage you that as you are very young in age, take Josiah as a role model in your life. He was only 8, so or very much young person. So, do we have anyone at the age of 8 here? What's your age? 9. Oh, senior to Josiah. So there is no person, there is no little person here in the age of 8. But see, at the age of 8 itself, he did 3 things. And that 3 things, those 3 things can be our basement for our spiritual life. Doing right things in the sight or in the eyes of the Lord. First one. Second one is following God's way, just as Josiah followed God's way. And third one is not turning from God. While we keep these 3 things in our lives and follow, as Josiah followed David's way, when we follow Josiah's way here, our spiritual journey would be even more grateful and fruitful. So we can always do great things in our lives, achieve great things in our lives. We can be right in our own eyes, or we can be right in people's eyes. We can follow many ways. There are lot of ways to follow. In this generation, we have a lot of things to follow. And we can turn to any side. So we have multiple choices, turning to things that are not beneficial for us, or turning to anything. In this crooked generation, as people of God, we need to follow the footsteps of Josiah, but by doing right things in the eyes of the Lord, by following God's way and not turning from God. So while we do these 3 things, or plan to keep these 3 things in your life from today, God will do a great wonder and miracle and bless us and bless our lives and make us as a greatest blessing for so many people. So let's look to the Lord in prayer so that He will give us strength to do these 3 things in our lives.